Good Saturday morning, everyone. Welcome into today's daily Bible reading for February the 11th. Today we are reading together in Genesis chapter 48 as we are in the interlude between the arrival of Joseph's family to Jacob and then the opening of the Exodus. Really what we have in chapters 48, 49, and 50 are really some housekeeping notes. Gives us detail about the blessings that are being handed down from Jacob to his descendants, and then just how things end up settling in for Joseph and his family. There's a span of about 17 years that takes place between chapter 47 to chapter 50, because it's just very interesting, coincidental maybe in some ways, that Jacob gets to spend 17 years with Joseph, then he is sent away to Egypt, then he is gone for around 20 years or so, and then he gets to spend the last 17 years of his life with Joseph. Once again, that's Jacob spending time with Joseph. 17 years on the front end, the interlude of 20, 21, 22 years, and then the latter 17 years he got to spend with Joseph as well in Egypt. And then Jacob is going to pass away in chapter 50, and we're going to see the things that work out between Joseph and his brothers at that point. Then Genesis ends, and Exodus begins with a long number of years, hundreds of years, passing between Genesis 50 and Exodus chapter 1. So let's read here in Genesis 48, which again is some housekeeping notes for the family of Jacob. Remember, that's what this latter part of Genesis is about. It's about Jacob's family and about their progression as the people of God, the descendants of Abraham. And now as Jacob is preparing to depart from this life, he has some blessings and promises to share with his sons. We're going to see Joseph and his sons specifically mentioned in chapter 48, and then the rest of the sons, their blessings are handed down in chapter 49. But for today, chapter 48, let me go and get that text on the screen and get to reading in Genesis 48 and verse number 1. Genesis 48, verse number 1, sometime after this, Joseph was told, "Your father is weaker." So he set out with his two sons, Manasseh and Ephraim. And when Jacob was told, "Your son Joseph has come to you," Israel summoned his strength and sat up in bed. Jacob said to Joseph, "God Almighty, El Shaddai, appeared to me at Luz in the land of Canaan and blessed me. He said to me, I will make you fruitful and numerous. I will make many nations come from you, and I will give this land as a permanent possession to your future descendants. Your two sons born to you in the land of Egypt before I came to you in Egypt are now mine. Ephraim and Manasseh belong to me, just as Reuben and Simeon do. Children born to you after them will be yours and will be recorded under the names of their brothers with regard to their inheritance. When I was returning from Padan, to my sorrow Rachel died along the way, some distance from Ephrath in the land of Canaan. I buried her there along the way to Ephrath, that is Bethlehem. When Israel saw Joseph's sons, he said, "Who are these?" And Joseph said to his father, "They are my sons God has given me here." So Israel said, "Bring them to me, and I will bless them." Now his eyesight was poor, because of his old age, he could hardly see. Joseph brought them to him, and he kissed and embraced them. Israel said to Joseph, "I never expected to see your face again, but now God has even let me see your offspring." Then Joseph took them from his father's knees and bowed with his face to the ground. Then Joseph took them both with his right hand, Ephraim towards Israel's left, and with his left hand, Manasseh toward Israel's right, and brought them to Israel. But Israel stretched out his right hand and put it on the head of Ephraim, the younger, and crossing his hands, put his left hand on Manasseh's head, although Manasseh was the firstborn. Then he blessed Joseph and said, "The God before whom my fathers Abraham and Isaac walked, the God who has been my shepherd all my life to this day, the angel who has redeemed me from all harm, may he bless these boys, and may they be called by my name and the names of my fathers Abraham and Isaac, and may they grow to be numerous within the land. When Joseph saw that his father had placed his right hand on Ephraim's head, he thought it was a mistake and took his father's hand to move it from Ephraim's head to Manasseh's. Joseph said to his father, "Not that way, my father. This one is the firstborn. Put your right hand on his head." But his father refused and said, "I know, my son, I know. He too will become a tribe, and he too will be great. Nevertheless, his younger brother will be greater than he, and his offspring will become a populous nation." So he blessed them that day, put Ephraim before Manasseh when he said, "The nation Israel will invoke blessings by you, saying, may God make you like Ephraim and Manasseh." Israel said to Joseph, "Look, I'm about to die, but God will be with you and will bring you back to the land of your fathers over and above what I am giving your brothers. I'm giving you the one mountain slope that I took from the Amorites with my sword and bow." And that is Genesis chapter 48. Again, the blessing here is focused on Joseph and on his two sons. The text tells us that Joseph was told that his father was weaker. It's more than likely that Joseph did not live with his family in the land of Goshen. Remember, Joseph, he's a big shot. He's basically the vice president of Egypt. So he doesn't have the ability to go and to live in Goshen amongst his relatives. No doubt that they probably spent a good bit of time together. I'm sure he went and visited on a number of occasions, but he's now hearing that his father is nearing the end of his sojourn here on this earth. So he goes with his two sons, Manasseh the firstborn and Ephraim the secondborn, probably anticipating that this is going to be the time for the giving of the blessing. So Joseph goes, and is told, and Jacob is told that Joseph has come to him. So might notice in the reading that they're switching from Jacob to Israel, Jacob to Israel, Jacob to Israel. Here it is appropriate for Israel to summon his strength and to set up in his bed. This is the man of the covenant. This is the bearer of the covenant. This is the bearer of the promise. Here he is summoning the strength that God gives him to sit up and to offer this blessing to his son, his favorite son, Joseph. Now, in verses 3 through 7, I guess it is, not really sure, I guess specifically in 3 and 4, I'm not really sure if this is in reference to Genesis 28 or Genesis 35. There are two instances in which God blesses Jacob in the land of Luz, which is Bethel. So it could be referencing one or the other, or he could be mashing the two covenant conversations together into one. Just summarizing what's taking place, that might be something that's taking place here. But the main gist of this is that he is going to adopt Joseph's sons as if they are his sons. They are going to be recipients of the blessing. Remember that we have some issues with some of Joseph or some of Jacob's other sons. Remember Reuben was going to be passed over as leader because he took Bilhah and slept with her and disgraced Jacob. That's actually going to be addressed in the next chapter, chapter 49. Simeon and Levi are going to not inherit any land in Canaan because of their transgressions as well concerning Shechem and that bloodshed. So it's almost as if these two sons are going to replace, I think, basically Simeon and Levi. They're going to have a land within the land of Canaan. So they're adopted as sons of a Jacob. And basically, again, this is Joseph also receiving 2 times the inheritance, because not only is he going to receive his inheritance, but his sons are going to receive those as well. It's also mentioned about Rachel's death, that she died on the way back to Canaan and the land and near the land of Ephrath, which is going to be Bethlehem. So that's mentioned here as well. Remember, she was not actually buried in the cave of Machpelah, but she was buried along the way. Now, in the middle of this discussion, there's a very interesting question. Jacob pauses. Israel saw Joseph's sons, and he said, "Who are these? Who are these?" Is this a legitimate question? Is the what's going on here? Some think that this is a ceremonial question because he is adopting these two grandsons basically as his sons so that they can receive part of the inheritance and the blessing. Other people think that maybe this is a legit question, that he has not seen them for some time. Again, we're going to be told here in just a moment that his eyesight is very poor. So maybe he legitimately could not see them. Maybe it was rhetorical in some way. Whatever the case is, Joseph describes them not by their names, not by Manasseh and Ephraim, or the other way, actually. A lot of times you can tell the order of importance by who is mentioned first, which goes back to the issue of Isaac and Jacob and Esau themselves. But here he says that they are my sons God has given me here. Both Jacob and Joseph within this chapter give so much credit to God, recognize that God is the one who extends blessings and who has made all these things possible. Israel speaks of just the joy and elation that he has in the fact that God has even allowed him to see his son Joseph's offspring. As far as we can tell, I think Jacob, Jay's throw me off. I think Jacob is the only patriarch that actually not only sees his grandchildren, as far as we can tell, but really interacts with them. We see that explicitly here within this chapter. Again, I do not recall Abraham really spending much time or doing anything with Jacob and Esau as far as the text tells us. The same thing would be true for Isaac. We don't see him interacting with any of the sons of Jacob. Again, as far as we can tell. But here, Jacob recognizes the blessing of being able to spend time and interact with his grandsons, the sons of Joseph, Ephraim, and Manasseh. And also, this is a reversal of the dreams. Remember, in the dreams, it was the others who were falling down before Joseph. But here, Joseph is falling down and bowing before his father. And this is significant because, again, we're in Egypt. And Joseph was a very high-ranking official within Egypt. But even with that being the case, he goes and he bows his head down before his father and shows him reverence and respect. There's also a note here that he took his two sons from his father's knees. That would be, again, another ritual of the adoption process. You think about whenever a son is birthed to a woman, that she comes out from between the knees. So here that symbolizes the birthing, in a sense, of these two sons as sons of Jacob now. Now, whenever he starts giving these blessings, remember, blessings probably are a bit different than what we think. The blessings that were given by the patriarchs often came with really real and legitimate prophetic elements to them, that they tell basically the future, that they're going to say, this is what's going to happen in the future to those who are being blessed. We're going to see that here in this chapter. We're especially going to see that in chapter 49, and I'll make mention of some of those things tomorrow. Now, the way Joseph presents his sons to Jacob, the way Joseph presents his sons to Jacob, is he would take the firstborn, Manasseh, on his left side, which would be Jacob's right side, the right hand being the hand of strength, honor, glory, and power. Again, Jesus sits at the right hand of God. The right hand represents the greater blessing. So he would put Manasseh toward Jacob's right hand. And he would take Ephraim and put him towards Jacob's left hand. Again, this will just be the natural way that this is supposed to take place according to that culture. But what does Jacob do? Jacob, even though he is losing much of his real eyesight, his tangible eyesight, he has great spiritual insights. I really like that comment from one writer. He's lacking in eyesight, he is gaining in insight, and he knows what he is doing, and he crosses his hands and puts the right hand on Ephraim and puts the left hand on Manasseh. Maybe this is just following in his own life, the fact that he was the second born and he was the one that was blessed. Don't exactly know, but it was his choice to do so, and he did that very thing. and he begins to bless. The text says, then he blessed Joseph. Really, he's blessing Ephraim and Manasseh, but they are the offspring of Joseph. So in a sense, he is blessing Joseph through his offspring. But he begins talking about the God, and his focus here really so much so is on God. And there's three things he says about God. He says, God before whom my fathers Abraham and Isaac walked. First thing that is a sign of God's relationship with his people is that he has fellowship with them, and he allows his people to walk with him just as Abraham and Isaac did. Secondly, he speaks about God, that God has been his shepherd all his life to this day. The second thing we see is God shepherding his people. And then finally, verse 16, he refers to God as the angel who has redeemed me from all harm, referencing the encounters that he had with Yahweh. So there is fellowship, there is shepherding, there is redemption that is taking place between God and the family of Abraham. And Jacob asked for those blessings to be continued upon Joseph and his sons. So may they be called by my name, the names of the fathers Abraham and Isaac, and may they grow to be numerous in the land. May they be known as the family of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, who serve the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. All this in verses 15 and 16, this is all strong covenant language, and it needs to be recognized by us that this is actually the moment in which the Hebrew writer identifies Jacob as having great faith. By faith, he says, Jacob offered a blessing to the sons of Joseph. That is the moment of faith that is identified by the Hebrew writer. Now, in the middle of all this, as he's doing this, Joseph's obviously seen what's taking place, and he doesn't interrupt his father. This is a very significant moment. He wouldn't want to do such a thing. But as soon as his father has a moment, he stops him and says, hold on, Dad, you got things switched up. Manasseh's actually the firstborn, not Ephraim. And in a sense, there's a lot of irony here too, isn't it? Because he's got the sons mixed up in Joseph's mind. Well, go back to Isaac. There's so many echoes here from the blessing that Isaac gave to Jacob instead of Esau that are showing up here again. Lack of eyesight, asking, who are you or who are these? Mixing up the brothers. There's just, the irony is thick. The echoes are strong. But once Joseph raises this to his attention, Jacob says, no. I know exactly who it is that I am blessing. And I know, listen, Manasseh is going to be a strong tribe as well. There are going to be many people come from him. Manasseh was one of the stronger tribes, but his younger brother will be greater than he. And for the first little bit, once again, the land is, as they're doing various censuses. I don't know. I'm not sure exactly what the plural for census is, but as they're counting the people on a certain number of occasions, or on a number of occasions, specific ones, Ephraim and Manasseh kind of go back and forth as to who has the most. And then eventually Ephraim is going to have the most. They're going to have the biggest population. And in fact, throughout the prophets, Israel is often referred to as Ephraim. That's one of the monikers for Israel itself, is the name of Joseph's son. So he is, the younger will be greater than he, and his offspring will become a populous nation. So he blessed them that day, putting Ephraim before Manasseh. And when he said, the nation Israel will invoke blessings by you, saying, may God make you like Ephraim and Manasseh. And there's I vividly remember some text in the prophets where we read last year where this type of language was used. I'm pretty sure that is the case. Now Israel turns to Joseph and he says, look, I'm about to die, but God will be with you and will bring you back to the land of your fathers over and above what I am giving your brothers. I give you the one mountain slope that I took from Shechem, or that I took from the Amorites with my sword and bow. More than likely, this is referring to Shechem. Now, the fact that he says he took it with his sword and bow, some think that maybe this is an non-recorded account of him taking Shechem. Others think that he is speaking through the instance in chapter 34, I think it is. Let me double check that. I think it's chapter 34 where Simeon and Levi do their thing and killing all the males within Shechem, and Jacob taking that over. Some think it is referring to that. Be that as it may, we're going to see in Joshua 24 where Joseph's descendants do end up inheriting that particular area of the land. But the main point about all of this, and the main point I want to stress, which you've heard this already before, and you're going to hear it again a couple more times probably, is this chapter affirms Jacob's faith in God's faithfulness. It is Jacob's faithfulness towards God's faithfulness, that Jacob recognizes the promises that God has made to his family. And he has noted how God has made good on those promises thus far, that God has allowed for his father and grandfather to walk with him, that he has shepherded, that Yahweh has shepherded Jacob himself throughout his life, and that God is going to redeem, or that has redeemed him and is going to redeem his family in the coming years. And then he mentions here in verse number 21 that God is going to bring you back to the land. So Jacob here is showing great faithfulness and trust in God's promises. Not blind faith, but faith that is based upon the evidence of what he has experienced thus far in his life. What about us? What have we experienced in our lives that causes us to trust all the more in God's faithfulness to us as his people? What have you faced that God has shepherded you through? In what ways has God redeemed you? In what ways have you experienced fellowship with God? Think upon those things and then allow them to cause you to trust God all the more. For we do enjoy fellowship with him. We do enjoy his shepherding, and we too enjoy his redemption. Let's never forget that. Let's continually put our faith, trust, and confidence in our great God, just as we see Jacob doing here within Genesis chapter 48. I hope you'll join me tomorrow as we read together from Genesis chapter 49, where he extends his blessings to the rest of his sons. There is some good, there is some bad. Some of the past mistakes made by some of the brothers comes back to bite them here in chapter 49, and we'll discuss that and highlight those instances as we make our way through. That's tomorrow on Sunday the 12th. We're going to read in 49. Monday on the 13th, we're going to read in 50. And then I misspoke yesterday. Actually, we have Tuesday off. Tuesday is Valentine's Day. And as I was trying to find some various places to throw in a catch-up day, I went ahead and threw that in there. So Tuesday is going to be a catch-up day. If you are a little bit behind in your reading, feel free to catch up on that day. You have a little bit of time to do so. And then we'll get into Exodus on Wednesday. We'll be in Exodus chapter 1 on Wednesday. Really looking forward to reading that together with you. Thanks so much for tuning in on the Saturday. Hope you have a great rest of your Saturday. We're looking forward to reading tomorrow, but looking forward even more so to being together tomorrow in our Bible classes and our worship assembly. Very much looking forward to that. And we'll see you then. Take care and God bless.